Hey friends, come gather around the fire tonight. Imagine this. We're sitting close, the flames flickering against a dark, endless sky, and I'm about to share some of the most bone-chilling hitchhiker tales ever whispered along forgotten highways. Picture yourself behind the wheel on a lonely road, where the wind carries secrets and every shadow hints at something mysterious. I've spent countless hours sifting through eerie accounts on Reddit and hidden forums, true stories of hitchhikers meeting the inexplicable on dark, desolate nights. These aren't just stories, they're real moments where the ordinary collided with the unearthly, leaving hearts pounding and minds racing. Before we dive into these haunting encounters, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Join our circle of night wanderers so you never miss a whisper of these spine-tingling adventures. Now, lean in a little closer, let the glow of the fire wrap you in warmth, and prepare yourself as we step into the unknown together. Let's unravel these true hitchhiker horror stories and see what secrets the dark has in store. Nikki had always believed in helping people. She wasn't reckless, just kind, the kind of person who saw the good in others. So, when she was driving home late one evening and spotted a man on the side of the road, thumb out, she hesitated. She had heard the warnings. Never pick up hitchhikers. But this guy, he didn't look dangerous. He was young, maybe early 20s, dressed in an old jacket and jeans, carrying nothing but a worn-out backpack. She slowed down. Maybe he was just down on his luck, someone who needed a break. Her fingers tightened on the steering wheel. A choice. Then, before she could talk herself out of it, she pulled over. The man jogged up to the passenger door, smiling, not a forced smile, not the kind that sets off alarm bells, a genuine one. Nikki exhaled, unlocking the door. "Where you headed?" "Just a few miles up," he said, sliding in. "If you can drop me anywhere near a diner, that'd be great." His voice was calm, polite. Maybe she had been paranoid for nothing. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then he spoke. "You know, not many people stop anymore." Nikki glanced at him. "Yeah, I guess you never know who to trust." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, never know." As they drove, the man didn't do anything wrong. No weird movements, no threats, just small talk. He told her about how he'd been trying to get home, how his car had broken down earlier that day. She nodded along, but something felt off. Not anything he was doing, just a feeling. A subtle, gnawing sense of unease in her gut. Maybe it was the darkness pressing against the windows, the feeling of being on an empty highway with a stranger in her car. She tried to shake it off. He's just a guy. But something inside her whispered, "Lock the doors." When they reached a small roadside diner, Nikki slowed down. "This good?" she asked. The man looked at her. "Yeah, this is perfect, thanks for the ride." She hesitated. Then, on impulse, she parked. "You hungry?" she asked. "My treat." The man blinked. For the first time, his expression shifted. Surprise? Then something else. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I could eat." Inside, they sat at a booth in the corner. The place was mostly empty. Nikki ordered a burger and fries. The man ordered the same. As they ate, his posture relaxed, his voice softened. And for the first time, Nikki noticed something. He seemed nervous, not in a bad way, not in a predatory way, but in a different way. Like he was thinking too much, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. After they finished eating, she paid the bill and they walked outside. The night air was cool, the parking lot empty. Nikki turned to him. "Take care, all right?" The man hesitated, Then finally he spoke. "You should never pick up hitchhikers." Nikki's stomach dropped. She tried to laugh it off. "Yeah, well, guess I got lucky with you." But he didn't smile. His eyes were serious. "Listen." His voice was low now, urgent. "I was gonna hurt you." Nikki felt like the ground had been pulled out from beneath her. Her breath hitched. "What?" The man exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "That was the plan. When I got in your car," he swallowed hard. "But then you were nice to me." Nikki stared at him, unable to speak. "You bought me dinner," he continued, voice cracking. "No one's ever done that for me." His eyes locked onto hers. "So I changed my mind." Nikki didn't move. She felt like if she spoke, the world would shatter. The man took a step back. "Don't ever pick up another hitchhiker," he said. "You might not get so lucky next time." Then he turned and walked away. Nikki stood there, frozen. Her hands were shaking. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She got back in her car, locked the doors, and drove away as fast as she could. Some people just need a ride, and some people are waiting for the wrong person to stop. Nikki was lucky, but the next driver, maybe they won't be. Matt was used to long drives at night. Working late shifts at a gas station on the edge of town, he'd grown familiar with the quiet emptiness of the road after midnight. No traffic, no noise, just miles of highway stretching into darkness. But that night felt different. The road was too quiet. Even the radio's static seemed muted as he rolled down the empty stretch of highway. Only the occasional streetlight breaking the gloom. Then he saw the hitchhiker, a woman standing on the shoulder of the road just outside the reach of the headlights. She wasn't waving, just standing there waiting. Matt slowed down. She looked normal enough, mid-30s, dressed in a worn-out hoodie and jeans, a small backpack slung over one shoulder. Still, something felt off. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't shivering. She wasn't in a hurry. She was just waiting. Against his better judgment, he pulled over. As Matt rolled down the window, the woman stepped closer. "Need a ride?" he asked, keeping his hand near the gear shift. She hesitated. Then, in a flat, almost robotic voice, she said, "Yeah, just a few miles up." She climbed into the passenger seat. Matt kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the door lock. The woman smelled damp, like she had been standing outside for too long. For the first few minutes, they drove in silence. Then, finally, she spoke. "You drive this way often?" Her voice was calm, too calm. Matt nodded. "Yeah, late shifts. Get off around 1 a.m. She nodded slowly, staring out the window. "You shouldn't pick up strangers." Matt chuckled nervously. "Yeah, well, you look normal enough." She didn't laugh. As they drove, Matt noticed something strange. Her hands were empty. No phone, no wallet, no sign she had been traveling anywhere. "Where exactly am I dropping you off?" he asked. She took a long time to answer. "Up ahead. I'll tell you when." Matt gripped the wheel tighter. She hadn't given an address, hadn't even looked at the road, just stared out the window, like she wasn't even paying attention to where they were going. The road ahead was nothing but trees and fog. No houses, no signs, no reason for anyone to be out here. Matt's gut twisted. He knew this area. There was nothing up ahead for miles. "You sure it's not out of the way?" he asked, forcing a casual tone. She finally turned to look at him and smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a reassuring one. A smile that was too wide, too forced, too knowing. "You'll see," Matt's stomach dropped. His pulse hammered. 100 thoughts raced through his mind. Why had she been standing out there alone? Why hadn't she given him an address? Why was she smiling like that? Then, she moved. Not much. Just shifted slightly in her seat. But Matt caught a glimpse of something dark beneath her hoodie. A flash of metal. A knife. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel. The engine hummed beneath him, steady, powerful, his only way out. Matt forced a laugh. Actually, I forgot. I need to stop for gas. Station's just back that way. He kept his voice light, casual. The woman just watched him, didn't blink, didn't answer. His fingers moved slowly toward the door lock. Then, without warning, he slammed the brakes. The car screeched to a halt. Before she could react, he threw the door open and jumped out. Matt ran to the other side of the road, breathing hard. The passenger door remained closed. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then finally, the door clicked open. The woman stepped out. She didn't look angry, didn't yell, didn't chase him. She just stood there, watching. Then, as if bored, she turned and walked back into the woods. Matt jumped back into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and sped away. The next day, he couldn't shake the feeling, so he did something stupid. He drove back to the stretch of road where he had picked her up. He got out, looked around. Nothing. No footprints. No sign anyone had been standing there. Then he spotted something half buried in the dirt. A backpack. Old. Worn out. Like it had been sitting there for years. Inside, he found a single item. An ID. A woman's ID. She had been missing for 6 years, and she had died 2 towns over. Matt never picked up another hitchhiker. Because sometimes when you stop for a stranger, they were never supposed to be there in the first place. David didn't mind driving at night. Most of his co-workers hated the late shifts, especially those who had to take the bus home through the rougher parts of town. That's why every now and then he'd give one of them a lift. It was just a 10-minute detour. No big deal. That night he was driving Leo, a quiet kid from the stockroom, home after closing up the store. The streets were nearly empty, the streetlights flickering lazily over rows of gated houses and tall fences. It was a normal drive, until Leo suddenly spoke. "Did you see her?" David blinked. "See who?" Leo twisted around in his seat, peering out the rear windshield. "That girl, by the gate." David glanced at the rearview mirror. Nothing but empty sidewalk and parked cars. "There was someone standing there," Leo muttered. "A girl in a white hoodie, with red on it." David's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. Red? Like a pattern? Or like... He shook the thought off. "Maybe she just walked off," he said. "You sure she wasn't waiting for someone?" Leo hesitated. Then quietly, "I don't think so." David drove on, his thoughts lingering on Leo's words. They had passed that gate seconds ago. If someone had been standing there, wouldn't he have seen them too? He glanced at Leo again. The kid looked uneasy, shifting in his seat. David tried to shake it off. Maybe Leo was just tired. But then, just as he was about to turn onto the main road, Leo's voice cut through the quiet. "There! She's there again!" David's blood went cold. How? He barely caught a glimpse, but there was someone standing beneath a flickering streetlight. Same white hoodie, same red marks. But this time, she was facing them. David's instinct was to slow down, but something deep in his gut screamed at him to keep driving. He did not want to get a closer look. The streetlight above her buzzed loudly, flickering as if struggling to stay on. Leo sat stiff beside him. "Dude, stop." David shook his head. "No way." "But what if she..." "Leo." His voice came out harsher than he meant. "We are not stopping." Leo exhaled sharply but didn't argue. David checked the rearview mirror. The girl was gone. David's foot pressed harder on the gas. The houses and streetlights blurred past them. Neither of them spoke. The air inside the car felt too thick, too heavy. Then, a movement. David's eyes snapped to the mirror. There she was, not on the sidewalk, in the back seat. The space behind Leo was empty, but in the mirror, a figure sat in the shadows. David's breath caught in his throat. He didn't think. He just swerved the car off the road. The car skidded to a stop, tires screeching against the asphalt. Leo yelled, grabbing the dashboard. "What the hell, man?" David's chest heaved. His hands were still clenched on the wheel. His eyes flicked to the mirror. Nothing. The back seat was empty. David turned around, his pulse hammering. Nothing. Just his work bag and an old jacket. Leo was staring at him. "You good?" David forced a breath. I thought I saw something." Leo swallowed. "Yeah," he muttered, voice tight. "Me too." David dropped Leo off at his building, neither of them saying much. He didn't tell Leo about the mirror, didn't ask if Leo had seen the same thing, didn't want to know. He just drove home. But as he pulled into his driveway, something made him check the back seat. He knew he wouldn't find anything, but he had to look. Slowly he turned. Nothing. Just an old jacket. And yet, the faint scent of damp fabric lingered in the air, like someone had been sitting there just moments ago. David never took that route again, because sometimes things by the road aren't waiting for a ride. They're waiting for someone to notice them. You made it to the end, so first of all, thanks for sticking around. There's something about hitchhiker stories that just gets under your skin, right? The idea that you could be in a car, your own little safe space, and yet the real horror is right there with you. Whether it's someone you picked up or something you never even noticed in the back seat, it makes you think. Have you ever had a weird encounter on the road? Something that didn't sit right? Maybe a ride that felt off, or a moment when you realized you weren't as alone as you thought. Drop your stories in the comments. I want to hear them. And if you like these kinds of tales, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps way more than you think. Subscribe to the Fear Archive so you don't miss the next deep dive into the kind of horror that feels just a little too real. And remember, some people you pass on the road were never meant to be picked up. Until next time, drive safe.